Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the June 17th, 2024 meeting of the school committee. Call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. The meeting is being both audio and video recorded, and I would ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Sam, if you could start us out, please.
Nicole Velasquez, Secretary.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Antonella Rochella.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Gregory Thompson.
Sarah Trulio.
Eliden.
Amy Delanta. Heather Brown, Director of Curriculum.
Okay, we have an amendment to the agenda, please. We have a time-sensitive issue with the Rotary concert. The series starts June 26th, which is 9 days from now before our next meeting. So we're going to add it to the agenda. Yes. What's that?
Do you want to do that after you add
What's
this
that?
to the, this is recognition of you.
Oh, trying to get that in.
Change it.
Yeah.
You're the best, Gordon. You're the best. So if I could add, take a motion to add 7.3 Rotary Concert Series to the agenda, please.
I make a motion to add 7.3 Rotary Club East Long Meadow proposal.
Motion made by Amy,
Second.
second by Antonella. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairperson, if you may just take a moment. We want to recognize your work as chair as a recognition award presented to Gregory Thompson, Chair, East Long Meadow School Committee, June 17th, 2024. We accomplished a lot this year.
Yes, we have. Thank you, Gordon.
And we've broken ground on a construction project.
Started
under
today.
your leadership
Awesome.
today.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks, Scott. Greg.
Thank you, everybody. I really do enjoy being the chair. So thank you.
You do a nice job and you put a lot of time into it
Thanks, Antonella.
and we appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Okay, let's move along to committee and subcommittee communications. Amy, do you want to start us out, please?
The only thing I have to share today is I was able to attend a couple of end of school year events at Maple Shade, one of them being a band concert, and it seemed that all of the events at that particular school went great this year.
Great, sweet. Thank you.
Anything
Kate.
tonight?
Okay,
Nothing tonight.
Antonella.
We did attend the teacher recognition
We
ceremony.
already talked about, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
No, we haven't been back.
a lot of teachers have put a lot of years into our district. And it was nice to see some of our old teachers were there. Some of them were retiring this year.
even some of my teachers were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we do have a lot of dedicated teachers to our district, so.
Yeah.
Nice.
Totally. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Okay. No, we have minutes to approve. I take a motion for the June 3rd.
I move to approve the June 3rd, 2024 executive session.
Motion made by Kate,
Second.
second by Sarah. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed nay. That carries 5-0.
Move to approve the June 3rd, 2024 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Kate,
Second.
second by Antonella. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed nay. That carries 5-0 as well. Thank you. Okay, opportunity for visitors. Seeing no visitors today, we are moving on. Are we doing this one first?
We're doing
Lori?
food services first.
Yes, okay. So we have the Director of Food Services, Lori Paul, today. Lori, how are you?
You.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for having me. I know in your packet was the upcoming big things we have for this next school year. The first one is our mandatory breakfast. I have had an opportunity to speak with all the principals, and I think we've worked out some of the logistics, because we do have a couple different options at each school. We can run it differently. But the breakfast is mandatory because it's the way the legislation's written for the National School Lunch Program. So in order to remain in our universal free meals and have no charge meals, we have to do the mandatory breakfast. So that's coming down the pipeline. And I think we're in pretty good shape and we'll go with the flow.
Lori, what does that look like in each, briefly in each school? Is a bag cold breakfast or?
So because there are components that are required to make a reimbursable meal for both breakfast and lunch, we're doing it per whatever the principals, thank you all. Like at Maple Shade, we do it in the classroom because of the way the timing works with the children's arrival and such, and that's been ongoing since I think 2016. And it works, it's quite the undertaking. I would try to stay away from that for any other school. The high school we piloted before the class, before the bell. And then when the students arrived at 7, they would just come down, pick the items they wanted for breakfast, sat in the caf, had their breakfast, bell rang, and they went to their assigned classrooms.
Been doing that since September. School started, right?
Since school started, yeah, we've been doing that kind of, testing, see how it goes, see how many kids are interested and show up and.
Do a lot of kids take the breakfast?
At the high school, we only had on average, about 75 kids come through, in a regular fashion. Sometimes we're getting the new faces and I think it's just a lot of the kids arrive in the nick of time and they don't have that opportunity, or there's a lot of draw. I hate to say it, I think a lot of them rather have a Dunkin' on their way driving through the Rotary than to come in here. But I mean, I think the ones that really need it are having it. So, yeah,
I think if more of our students are riding the bus, we probably have bigger turnout.
absolutely.
But it's like 7:10 to 7:20 window. So the kids were kind of getting close to the 7:15 to 7:20. They're just going straight to class, but the kids really enjoy it, seeing.
Yeah, we had a lot of the regulars and I think it was a welcome, even, just saying, hey, there's a granola bar there. Take it, put in your bag for later. You might not be hungry now, but you can, have it and put what you don't eat in your backpack for after. So that worked out. Speaking with Mr. Pearson, we're going to do a similar model, but we have to pump them out. So we're going to really push them through, kind of have them choose what they want, put them in a bag and, take their bag, because he's going to have to rotate a lot of kids out of where they can be.
Yeah, I mean,
eating.
we're gonna have higher participation in the high school, particularly at the beginning when it's a little bit of a novel idea.
Oh,
We're excited
absolutely.
About it. I imagine it would tail off, but September is gonna be interesting. And the plan, like, we're gonna have 600 kids that want it, but we will see.
Yeah, yeah, we're ready. And then Mrs. Santinello, I think we're gonna do it right up from the bus.
Yeah, just a walk.
Walk through and
Go right to the-
take it and then eat in their classroom. So it is, with the state is allowing a lot of different options, for breakfast, they call it before the bell, in the classroom, after the bell. They even have a second chance breakfast. So there's a lot of different options and a lot of different things. And, Ms. Slody and I spoke briefly, but we're gonna meet officially and narrow down the little ones. I hate to say are gonna be an interesting take on how to maneuver, that age of the student and the arrival and
Particularly
whatnot.
because our cafeteria is utilized by the CAP
Yeah.
program before school,
Yeah,
so it's not.
couple hurdles will,
That's one of the reasons why Maple Shade went to in the classroom, because they have CAP in the.
and they have arrivals coming in all
Right.
different doors. Because the part of it is that they have to have the opportunity to choose if they want breakfast or not. We cannot not let them come down. So I know Maple Shade was one of those, so a lot of the children arrived directly into the classroom and not possibly given the opportunity to come down if we had, only in the cafeteria. So that's why we do breakfast in the classroom, but
Are you
we're gonna go with the flow.
increasing staff hours? You're gonna need?
Yeah, so I'm expecting I'm looking at probably having to add about 14 more hours per day.
Per day?
For the 5 schools, to get that coverage. And because it's such a short time frame that the kids are eating, I just want to be prepared, have that staff on and get the children in and through the line. It does have to be recorded for each child. I can't just do a bulk and say, oh, here's 600 breakfasts, have at it. It has to be recorded for the child having the meal. It has to be recorded as their meal. So the more staff we have on to make sure we can get those kids the breakfast they need and have it recorded properly, the better. So yeah, we'll have a lot of changes and so my staff know they've got to be flexible come September, so.
It'll still self-fund itself with the reimbursement.
Yes, I was trying to figure out, I don't have the reimbursement rates for next school year yet, but this school year was $2.28. So I'm thinking it would probably have to do about 775 to 800 breakfasts a day to be at that break-even point. Adding that many hours, which.
It's like a third then, right? You need a third of the students to come down, almost 25%. Third,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Are you gonna
But at Maple Shade, we have like almost 55% of the kids participate. She does, yeah, Maple Shade does about 150 to 175 breakfasts a day. So I can see that being viable. Yep.
And we'll be sending out information as we get closer to the school starting.
Yes. Yep. Any other questions on the mandatory breakfast? The next hurdle we have, and I still have to finish uploading all my documentation for that, but our school is slated to be, our school district is slated to be CEP, which is Community Eligible Provision, meaning all meals will be free. So the interesting part is they're already free. We're universal free through this Massachusetts, but with CEP, it's free meals for the district, and the reimbursement is coming differently for funding purposes. So the state of Massachusetts has asked anybody with a identified student percentage of 25% or more has to become a CEP school in order to get more federal funding, in order to assist the Massachusetts budget that has been funding universal free meals. We are at 26.7%. So we just made it. I finished running all the figures on Friday and uploaded. So we have a couple more documents that have to be put in place, and then we should be notified within the month, because it does have to get approved, because basically DESE verifies every student that is free directly certified through the virtual gateway. And that's our identified student participation percentage population. And once they verify that, then we have to be counted as a CEP school district.
Is that self-reported, Lori, by the families, or that's already
No,
system
it's
based?
the system,
Okay.
for the Executive Office of is it human, I don't know, EEOHE, whatever that is. I don't know the acronyms at the top of my hand. Yeah, Executive Offices of the Human.
Goes through the
Yeah.
portal, right? So
Yeah, it's through the virtual gateway portal. So it's all the students that are directly certified through the state of Massachusetts.
the only one who goes into that is Lori.
And that's what these percentages reflect. The-
Yeah, so this doesn't even account for any of the families that did put in a paper meal application to receive a free and reduced priced meal when they were priced out. So that puts a little bit of a sticky wicket in the other offerings that we have, that when a student is a free or reduced, they offer discount, busing, sports. I don't know what else might become. So now that will fall onto the district to do like an alternate income form if the district is wanting to still offer those services, no charge.
And so we will. And there's a form that the state had created, supplemental income
Yeah, it's an alternate income form, supplemental.
I'm gonna work with
Yeah.
Lori over the summer so that we have this up and going. So, and Lori, maybe you can explain what, like, when a school year starts up, is it 30 days that were, whatever, if a student is deemed free in the month of June, when school ends, when school starts up, they're still considered free. Is it for a month?
It's, yes, well, it's a grace period, which usually goes to October 1. For the state, they usually say that,
Students can fall off of that, going through the portal that she was referring to.
right, and it
Just
just to
can-
give the families an opportunity to turn in their paper application and things like that, but that will not be. So I don't have all the documentation yet for CEP, so that's a whole nother set of paperwork and things that would go out to inform the families of CEP.
And my understanding is that this paperwork does not come from the food service department. It will come from central office. So we'll have to create the form and we'll have to, or tweak what the form that Desi has already and get that out to families because we will need them to send it back if they believe that they would qualify for some other benefits such as free transportation. Because we might have charged them for busing or they might, maybe we didn't charge them and now they fall off on the list that Lori's gonna get in September. So do you see what happens? Changes happen like that. So
Yeah,
And the form is for free and reduced lunch. And because we already have free lunch, I imagine people are filling the form out less.
yes,
Unless-
we had much
About
less,
other benefits.
exactly.
So we're going to have to let them
Yes.
know about that, to communicate with families so that they understand, and it's not a free and reduced lunch application because we are a SEP district. It will be this new form that we're gonna have to
Okay.
communicate to everybody, so.
How does the state know? Do they have to, do families have to register through the state, or is it people who receive SNAP benefits?
Right, the SNAP benefits, transitional assistance type of thing. So yeah, a family would have already been working with the state to
I see.
become qualified as their free. And I find that it's normally, kind of a pattern, same families that, are usually on this list every year for the school, which is free exact match certified. So they've already been working with the state for years to, get them assistance in their household.
So there could be families, and not that there's much we can do, but there could be families who haven't reached out for help, okay.
Yeah.
There most definitely are, right?
Oh, I'm sure there are. And that's another thing too. We can become also a partner with a SNAP. I didn't look into that, where you would get kind of a little bit of a training and then help with outreach in the community for SNAP, for people to apply for SNAP on the DTA. And, that would then put them on the Massachusetts assistance things that they could be eligible for. That's another
Yeah.
project for another day.
Complicated every year, doesn't it, Lori? It seems like it.
It is. This was like, I was shocked. And when I ran the numbers, I was like, oh, wow. They wanted us to do it mid-year and we just couldn't get the data that they needed for all this verification. We just didn't have clear data. Just starting up with Power School. And it was, it's quite the undertaking.
Lori has done a great job. As you can imagine, there's been a ton of work behind the scenes for this. The other thing I just wanted to mention that I think is important, is the percentage reduced, correct, Lori? Wasn't it 40% before for it to become a SEP district, and now it's 25%?
Oh, yes, the federal law.
Federal.
Yes, federally, they used to always say, years ago it was 60%, if you 60% on thing, then the federal went down to 40, and then the new law is 25%.
So there's a lot of districts that are going through the same exact thing that we are.
Oh, yeah.
To know that.
Oh, yes, there's quite a few, so.
Thank you, Lori.
Have any other questions on it?
All else as well?
All else is good.
Great.
Plugging along.
You have a
Meadowbrook.
project this summer, right?
Yeah, Meadowbrook freezer is going in, so.
Great.
Which is needed. We have not a lot of needed updates, but we're plugging away. It's hard when you gotta get 3 bids. three,
Oh, yeah.
three,
Mhm.
and
Procurement. one.
procurement, yeah, the procurement is interesting, so.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll keep you posted.
Please do.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, moving along, we have the East Long Meadow Public School end of year presentation by the leadership team.
All right, so we have our leadership team here. We can invite them up all together. District's gonna do a quick report first and then sending orders of time, which is a change up from last time.
I don't think we can get them all in order. Oh,
Okay, so we'll invite them one at a time. I saw Frank looking eager.
Frank's ready.
so- He was leaning. Okay, so the district report is up on the screen. And similar to what Lori's going through, we presented at the mid-cycle, just to give you an idea of the breakdown of our student population. According to the state, we have 2,507. I think actually it's a little bit, we ended the year a little bit larger than that, according to Power School, but that's October 1 numbers. And you can see how we break out in terms of race and ethnicity, as well as other populations. We were talking about free and reduced, but the state categorizes it in terms of accountability standards, low income, and you see 26.6% based on our current enrollment. Moving into our actual SMART goals, as you sort of frame all of our SMART goals, we start with the whole child, and we're looking to make sure, simply put, that we're supporting the whole child every day so that children are moving forward emotionally, socially, and academically. We had some intense focus this year, as you know, on attendance. And one of the things we really honed in on, not only as a district, but at each school, was looking at the daily attendance rate and then also our chronic absenteeism. And we're excited that, at least according to the numbers that DESE released, which was through March 1st, but they released them in May, we're looking at a reduction from 13.5% chronic absenteeism to 7.2%. And I think that should hold up pretty well when we get full look late August to June. So we're excited about that. Two other areas in terms of looking at making sure we have the skill set to support our students emotionally, socially, academically. We were looking to get at least 80% in our 2 full day professional development days of Unit A and Unit E staff into universally designed PD, universally designed instruction PD, or culturally responsive practices. And we actually were able to get 97% when you get the 2 units as a whole. So that was exciting over those 2 professional development days. And later, probably late August or early September, because we just received draft policies. Our district steering committee for diversity and equity have been working on our policies that really deal with climate and culture and discrimination or non-discrimination, which is probably a better way to put it, and how we make those more current and probably proactive to really represent what we would like to see ELPS become, not only now, but into the future for all of our students and families. And so you'll get revised policies, which took a little bit longer than we had expected, coming to you hopefully in the late August meeting. This quick look, this was the chart that DESE released back in May, and it gives you the 7.2. And the daily attendance rate for ELPS at that time is 95.6. The schools will go into their specific rates and some of the things that they've done, which has been pretty incredible in terms of the outreach. And every school improved, which is really exciting. Objectives under 1.2, really looking at that MTSS team, but most importantly, looking at making sure that we continue to get an idea of how our students are feeling. And we continue to give that panorama survey 3 times a year. We're excited this year that we're starting to get, at least on the secondary level, more students involved in the discussion about the results. And that has gone pretty well. And then it takes us into, and I know the schools, seeing the slides in your packets, have a lot of this, so I won't spend a great deal of time, but we're always excited to see that supportive relationships stay in the 90s and even tick up if they can throughout the year. Positive feelings, this is 6 through 12 that's on screen. Can you go back?
There you go.
Positive feelings ticked up a little bit towards the end of the year, and challenging feelings, also fewer students were experiencing challenging feelings on a daily basis. That's basically what that means when you see a green increase or an arrow up. And engagement increased. Then we go 3 through 5. And we see that same element in supportive relationships, and challenging feelings has the green dot, but it basically stayed the same. Positive feelings, unfortunately, took a hit in 3 through 5, as well as engagement went down a percentage point. And so then we're going to take a look at that, because the questions, as you've seen in our discussions when we've done other presentations, we're trying to understand, do the students really understand those survey questions when we ask them, especially when you are asking them, I'm interested in what's in my classes some of the time. That's considered by the survey response as a negative response. Our thought is that maybe students are seeing that as a positive response. Yeah, some of the time I'm interested. And so that would be a positive response as opposed to very little of the time or never. So anyway, we're taking a look at that as we prepare for next year's survey. Remember, the K through 2, these are responses coming from the teachers. So the hope would be that they're feeling like you're seeing growth throughout the year, and we are seeing most of the areas tick upwards in terms of student growth. Emotional regulation had gone up a little bit at the mid-cycle, but it's basically stayed the same in terms of the responses here. Now I went through that fast. Questions on any of that? Okay. Teaching and learning, continuing to take a look at not only, we talked a little bit earlier about universal design for learning and culturally sustaining pedagogy. We've done a lot of that through our professional development, but we put in some lofty goals here, and we've gotten close, but we didn't necessarily hit the 75% of all of our students on iReady hitting typical growth. And we got close again in stretch growth with 30%, but we'll see that as we break it out. I think Ms. Brown's going to walk us through some things.
So the annual growth is determined based on how they test at that first diagnostic, their baseline, and they put them in a cohort, and based on that, they use that formula, how much growth kids that score that at this grade level usually will get. And then, of course, the stretch growth is the additional growth that would be necessary to continue to catch up to their peers. So for reading, we got to 48% of the kids in K to 5 met their annual growth, and 59% in 6 to 8 met their annual growth. And 26% met their stretch growth in K to 5, and 30% made their stretch growth in 6 to 8. So we hit that stretch growth goal. And then for mathematics, we had 36% of the K to 5 met their annual growth, 13% met their stretch growth, and for 6 to 8, 2% met their annual growth, and 26% met their stretch growth. 6 to 8 is in year 2 of their illustrative math implementation. So I think that's part of this in terms of folks just really using their time to collaborate and get together. And then for the action steps, did you have any questions on annual or stretch growth?
This is only for grades K through 8?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
ninth grade used IXL this year, so you'll hear more about that when
The high school.
presents.
Next year with IXL, when we have more familiarity, we're going to be able to move that ninth and 10th grade. This year was just ninth grade because we did start out iReady, then moved into IXL because we had a few piloting IXL. And high school will be able to give you more detail on that.
So there's data for the high school then?
So there's a lot here. So just in a nutshell, we're really making sure that teachers have high quality instructional materials in their hands, that we are doing frequent learning walks, that we're providing professional development. We're helping them utilize the tools to help all students access grade level content, and also helping folks to use their time together when they're collaborating effectively and efficiently. And so out of this, our learning walk data, we did find that it would behoove us, and we did this at the end of the year, to really re-articulate the expectations for using the curricular materials, being really crystal clear about that, sharing again the different support systems, so that when they go into next year, everyone's on the same page as to what the expectations are from all buildings. And then we can provide those supports as needed. And that also offered some information about professional development.
Actually, before you leave that, and I think that's because that was something that we discussed in our last few leadership team meetings, that will give us a framework as we do more of this at the secondary level. Because the high school is moving on ELA curriculum, and they're moving into their second year of math implementation, as well as science. Actually, science is on the clock, I think, right?
Science will be looking at materials next year.
Materials.
And just a lot of this has to do as well with all the professional development and supports that we provide to help make sure teachers are creating those joyful classroom spaces that feel like they belong and can take those academic risks, working with their peers. And I think the most impactful professional development that we provided last year were the math learning labs, where we really could talk not just about the content and the pedagogy, but how to create the spaces where kids can interact with each other and take those risks. So we will be continuing with our math coaches next year, more math learning labs and possibly ELA learning labs as well.
We were able to do 2 cycles, right?
Yes, so we did.
2 rounds at each grade level, which was really great.
And here the big growth was implementing in addition to iReady, the early literacy universal screeners that are approved by DESE. And so we implemented that K-5. We are making a few changes for next year. We're going to use DIBBLS at K-2. It is a fully approved screener, and it will give us the information that we need for those interventions. Because really what we're trying to do is make sure that we're getting the information that we need, both to determine who needs interventions, but also then drilling down and getting the diagnostic data to figure out what they need, and then progress monitoring to make sure that what we're giving them is working. So we're continuing to grow in that, but I was excited that we did come to that conclusion with DIBBLS. I think we'll get even better information than we have from the current literacy screeners.
We're working on creating an assessment schedule for next year that hopefully provides not only strategic timing for interventions, but enough spacing so that, we can see what does the growth look like between assessments. I think this year was somewhat contrived.
I'm glad you said that, because I meant to say this when we had this slide, that 6 to 8 gave their last diagnostic at the end of the year. But if you remember K-5, we switched our schedule to anyway, our experiment did not work, but we did this in March. So I think if we had continued into June, you would have seen even more of the kids meeting their annual growth and stretch growth for reading and for math. So thank you for saying that, because I completely forgot to say that.
Heather, did you have a chance to cross-reference the projected proficiency reports at the end of the year with MCAS from last year?
Those are all in the school report.
Those school reports, yeah. All right.
So, and You rounded out with this last goal where we're talking about celebrating diversity and obviously being an inclusive and welcoming culture. And that was something that I talked about just as we think about supporting the whole child. And so the biggest element as we go to the next slide here really was the diversity and equity steering committee meeting more regularly. The hope was that that group really could become a catalyst for two things. One was the policy revision, which really became the focal point for the year. And we'll see those policies as we approach the August or September meeting. But we also wanted them to get involved in the recruitment, hiring, and retention work that we had done as a leadership team and a subgroup of the steering committee had done a few years prior to this year. Because we're using a lot of the tools that we developed in the hiring process. But what we're not doing much of right now is the recruitment. And so we need to do more. We've taken some steps to do more with that, but not to the level that we would like to. And so that will be something that we're really going to take a focus on, hopefully with the steering committee, but also the leadership team. So as we go through, if you go to the next slide, really it was this work where we were working not only with the steering committee, but the LBVC Director of Diversity and Equity Inclusion to take a look at our policies and how we structure ELPS and how do we do a better job making sure that all are feeling welcome, all are feeling comfortable being in our climate as a school system.
And quite frankly, I think the policies are important for that recruitment because we have to make sure that we are creating a space where the folks that we're recruiting want to come and people want to stay.
I
That's
think
going to improve things.
that's a great point. So I think as we get those, have the discussion at this level, which becomes a much more public discussion, hopefully have any final edits and revisions, then get approved. That allows us to kick off the year with some messaging that I think will be really beneficial and valuable for the entire district. Because it's not just one policy, it's actually a group of policies, and in one situation, and that's some of the work we have to do this summer, it became quite a comprehensive one that's attaching or possibly pulling in numerous other policies. So we just have to look at how we manage that to make sure we're making sense of it and that it's clear for folks as we go forward. Oh, so we lost it.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Last slide.
Questions on any of that? I know that you have all of it in your packets before we move on to school presentations. Okay. All right. We are going in reverse order from what we did at the mid-cycle. So we're going to start off with our high school. And so we have Mr. Page and Ms. Blaine coming up. So have your slide loaded.
What's that?
We have your.
Yeah. So you're gonna start us off and go attendance data, which mirrors some of the stuff discussed at the district data, and then into some of the IXL work and go from there.
Okay. All right. Everyone. I believe we're here already. So in regards to supporting the whole child, when we were addressing standards, I should say SMART Goal 1.2, in regards to utilizing a multi-tiered system of supports to ensure all students progress both academically and in their social, emotional, and behavior development. What we did is we basically talked through our MTSS team and in looking at the data on attendance and trying to support students in regards to academics, but also finding out what the barriers were in terms of why they're not coming to school. We developed an attendance team. And so the action step was to work with families in the ELPS or at the high school specifically to ensure consistent school attendance. And so the attendance team kind of came from some of the work that we were doing with our MTSS team. And some of the people that are on the team were the same. And then we brought in some other people who weren't part of the team initially. So the team consisted of our admin team from the high school, our graduation coach, who also was on the MTSS team, Candy, who's the director of nursing, our care coordinator, Maggie, a special educator and a teacher. And then we also had some teachers who volunteered to be attendance champions for some of the students who had been chronically absent. And so it was really enlightening for all of us on the team to see what those barriers were in terms of why some of our students are not attending school. And, you know, the work that everybody did in terms of having those conversations with students and families really brought to light some things that we just didn't know were going on with some of those students. And so we were able to not only layer in supports for those students, but we were able to layer in support for some of those families with the work that we were doing. So if you look at the end of the year results, our daily average attendance through March 1st was 96.6. We were thrilled with, because, you know, previous to that, we were worried about some students who were chronically absent. And so if you look at the breakdown, you know, when you look at the all student is the 96.6, and then you can see the female, male, the low income obviously is a little bit lower. And of course, some of the barriers were specific to the students in low income and high needs and students with disabilities. So that work will obviously continue into next year. And we feel like we had a really great response from some of the staff in regards to being attendance champions. And we're hoping that we can actually some more people to volunteer to those students and their families in the upcoming year.
Do they actually make phone calls and follow up? Is that what the champion does? Okay.
Yes, and daily meetings and check-ins with the student, calls or meetings with the family.
Yeah, and just to add to that piece, I think the efforts been on chronic absenteeism when we tried to re-engage students who I think there were steps that our full staff were doing in order to get ahead and be proactive in supporting getting into school, because we dropped off significantly from our chronic absenteeism rate. We were at 17.9%. From 23, now we're down to 6%, which I don't have that finalized number, but being the single digits it's so there was communication from our staff throughout the course of the year to home, teacher level, admin level about the importance of attendance. And thing we did make a point of doing this year is balancing that support piece, which Ann was talking about, with kids who were chronically absent, but also that accountability and really following through on some expectations when it came to, you know, credits connected to attendance, making sure that those kids got to school. So the balancing of the two, it's not just about the sport, but we had to mix in that accountability piece too, I think helped drive down those numbers. So drive down numbers in a good way. But
drive up daily attendance rate, drive down.
Yeah. But it was a full school effort. And that's the piece I really wanted to highlight, because it's impossible for myself, Anthony, and Gary to, you know, manage 800 students when it comes to attendance, you know, so it does really take that village approach. So jumping into the next goal here, this is around teaching and learning. What we have highlighted in our information is some data connected to some diagnostic data with both math and English. They're set up they're both set up the same way. I go through first the strands on the math side and just give us a snapshot of what the diagnostic looked like that we ran in May. And then on the English side as well, the strands overall in terms of how the kids were broken down by strand under ELA, and then diagnostic data connected to the ELA. And then the last piece I'll just talk about a little bit in IXL. It's also the skill work, and we could see where students made growth over the course of the year. And the majority of the skill work that we did this year was connected to the students on that freshman team, which we established this year. And that is something that we're looking to expand upon going into next year. So just kind of talking through this a little bit. As Mr. Smith noted, we did start the year utilizing iReady. One thing iReady did not have at the high school level that IXL does is IXL does have the skill work and the remediation activities that the students can engage in when you see those deficiencies. iReady at the high school level only has that diagnostic, which is why we made that transition in January. Because we also saw not just that it had a diagnostic that met our needs, and the data was very similar from what we saw in the fall to what we saw in January, but we also saw that ability to address where those deficiencies were through the same program. And that's why we made that shift. And I saw our teachers utilize this in a lot of ways to really impact those areas where we saw weaknesses in our kids. So what you have listed here first is the first snapshot in January of where our students scored on their diagnostic by strand. So on the math side, you have that overall score that is that blue bar at the top, and then by there below that, there's 6 different strands that they break out the questions on. This is something I do like in IXL over the iReady, as well as iReady only had 4 strands of math and IXL has 6, so they break it down a little bit more. 2 areas where we saw growth from January to May in math, which was nice to see, was under numbers and operations and then geometry, as we're preparing these students for their MCAS test, which does cover that, and they're really not exposed to those standards until high school. It was good to see that growth that we saw in our students. And on the algebra and algebraic thinking side, we did see a slight bump from January, but I don't think I saw growth that we would have loved to see, but we did see a slight bump there as well. The concern I think you're probably going to note in here is those numbers at the bottom are going by grade level. We definitely do see that our freshmen are still testing below grade level at the end of their freshman year. So that's something that I want to work on going into next year as I, better understand how to utilize this program and continue to put those structures into place where we are utilizing it. So, but we did see ways as the year went on of how to make this work effectively, and we're going to continue those things as we go into next year. But just jumping to that next slide, obviously, because most of our students, a chunk of our students do take algebra during their freshman year. So this gives you a breakdown of where our students stand in terms of their algebra and algebraic thinking. That's the strand on the previous slide. The red is the students who are so what they say far below grade level. That's basically most of those kids are in that 7th grade range. The yellow is they're coding in that 8th grade range, and then you have the light green as the at grade level, and the that's smaller sliver at the top is above grade level. So again, like I highlighted on the previous slide, this is something that we have to continue to work on because we have to make sure that these kids have these skills as they take these courses that do build from one to the next.
Is this being administered in their algebra classes and their math classes?
So our math teachers are running that diagnostic. They ran the diagnostic in January, and then they ran it again in May. Same thing on the ELA side. So in the math courses, because we have 4 different levels of math for freshmen, you have Algebra 1, Algebra 1 honors, geometry, and then geometry honors, and the kids are mixed into those 4. Majority of the kids are either in the algebra standard or the geometry honors, and it's kind of a blend in the middle. But those are the teachers who were administering this assessment, yes.
So they're taking it in their class?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Yep. And it's the same thing on the ELA side. The freshman English and the freshman English honors teachers are assessments as well. So on the English side, you do see, jump to that slide. 1, overall, our students are right at that freshman grade level. If you look at those scores, we would like to see them past that bar. That's going to be the goal that we really focus in on next year is moving that line across. I'd love to come back to this data and see that growth from one year to the next. But we did see areas where the students did surpass grade level in areas like vocabulary. We saw growth in the vocabulary from the January assessment through the May assessment. Also, hold on, let me just jump to my data here. On the writing strategies as well, especially with the amount of writing and the level of rigor of that writing on the high school MCAS. You want to make sure that they are strengthening their writing skills. So those are 2 areas where I'm happy to see growth. Jumping on to that next slide, similar pie graph that you saw with math. I broke it out by the reading level strand. And you can see the breakdown. Our scores are a little better here. We have to do a better job of pinpointing some of our scores of our students on the English side, but overall the scores do look better. We have more students either at or above grade level, and that dark green is above grade level. This last slide, the majority of the information that you see on this slide connects directly to the freshman team. So what you saw on the previous 4 slides is the diagnostic data. So that was only the assessment that was run in January, and then you had the assessment that was run in May. This is the skill progress over the course of the year. So we have our freshman team teachers during the students foundations block were having the students work on skills within the IXL program where they demonstrate deficiency diagnostic. So what you see up here is the number of questions that our students answered, the number of different skills that they practiced. You know, maybe one student had 40 skills that they practiced, another one did 39. That's that cumulative number of how many skills they practice on. That top one is the math side, and the green book on the bottom, that's the English side. The skills proficient is how many different skills that cumulative number of our freshmen demonstrate proficiency on that skill side. So like, let's say one student, achieved 30 skills of proficiency in English. That's where you get that, those numbers in that category. In IXL, how a student achieves proficiency is they keep taking questions on that topic until they get to 80%. Every time they get a question right, it moves the percentage up like 3 or 4 points. They get it wrong, it drops it down 8 to 10. So they really have to work hard to get to that 80%. And then mastery is at 100%, which is harder for the students to achieve because the questions do get more difficult as you go through. So that's why it's harder to get to that one. But we do see students mastering skills in the program, which is great. The pinpointed students on the team. So that's why I said this is pinpointed number. They were our students who utilized the program the most. So on the math side, you had 104 students with pinpointed diagnostic levels, and then on the English side, you had 68. So it's right in line with about how many kids we had on the team. Had about 80 kids on the team this year. That number, it changes over the course of the year. You have to continue to test IXL in order to keep that pinpointed level. If a kid stops testing, then that number goes away after 30 days. So our honors classes, our geometry honors courses didn't use this program as much. So that's why you don't see those pinpointed numbers at this point in the year. It's typically the algebra courses and the standard English courses that we're continuing to diagnose and assess their students. And then you can see the current grade point levels of the students who are pinpointed, 8.2 and 8.7 on the math and English respectively, and the average monthly growth where we saw of our student scores, that percentage. Questions on teaching and
What were some of the interventions that were put into place? Because then it says the outcome.
So during the foundations block, we were continuing to remediate skills through the IXL program. One thing we're doing going into next year for students where we saw kids continually test below grade level, and also based on their grades in the courses and teacher recommendations, those are kids we're going to continue that remediation going into next year, where they're being assigned to an MCAS preparation course in math and English, where we have a geometry teacher, standard geometry teacher, standard English 10 teacher who have the same cohort of kids. And they're also going to be teaching the MCAS course at the exact same time to better support those students who need that additional help. We identified about 30 of them.
Okay.
So it's about 30 kids who are going to get that more intensive remediation going into next year. They'll be part of that sophomore team. So, again, we're learning the IXL program. Those numbers for how many are still testing below grade level don't look great. We also have kids who are passing our algebra courses connected to our real curriculum. So we're using multiple data points to figure out which ones are best assigned to that team as we get better with the program. I'm hoping those numbers look better going into next year in the IXL program.
That's what I was going to ask. How did this data impact course grades? Like, did you see a correlation between students really coming out almost a grade level below and the types of grades they were receiving in their core classes?
It fluctuated. Like, there's some kids who the data was accurate, and there was other kids who maybe weren't putting in their best effort on the IXL program, where you would see on a test they might get a B in their geometry course, but we're testing at a 6th grade level in the IXL program, which is kind of a red flag, which allows us to have those conversations with the kids and their parents about like, let's do this with a little bit more fidelity, you know? So that's why we identified the students for next year for that sophomore team. We're looking at all of the data points and not just IXL. That was one that we brought into the conversation, you know, so.
And then does IXL allow you to drill down standard level within those domains?
So it, by student, yes.
Okay,
So if I pulled up a student report, I could get a list of skills where they have those deficiencies, and the program will create a skill plan for those kids to work on to remediate those skills. So if, let's say a kid had deficiencies on geometry, in the geometry stand under skills X, Y, and Z, you know, it's going to assign those problems for them to work on.
I was wondering just if there was a way to, if you could do it at the grade level, then that information could potentially be sent to Birchland to be able to think about if this is a concern coming up into ninth grade, is there a way to then start to put a greater emphasis on those particular standards or domains as they're coming up? So that way there you can see if there's a way to get ahead of it as opposed to receiving students who are coming at least.
It may be in the, it is a newer program for us and we're still kind of learning some of the bells and whistles. I do know on the teacher side, they can get class breakdown and identify which kids struggled in the diagnostic on specific questions. So if there's like a whole class snapshot of like 5 or 6 kids just aren't getting this one, maybe we can go back and reteach that. So we do get that. So there's probably something like
Similar maybe, just something to think about.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So our last slide, and this one is around school culture. And we put a lot of work into our wellness data. And the 2 questions that we focused on this year, just connected to that concept of inclusivity. At the fall SMART goal presentation, when we're looking at that first question of I feel I am part of my school, I feel I am part of the community at my school. That percentage is at 80%. We're hoping to get that around 85 to 90% this year. It's at 82%, which is a little bit of a dip from January. We were hoping that was going to be a little bit higher, but that's something to continue to work for going into next year. And then second question was my school is inclusive of all backgrounds and identity. So we're hoping to try to bridge the gap between those 2 questions where if kids feel like everybody's included, they also feel as part of that community and try to get those percentages consistent. So got a little bit of work to do there. There's a lot of things that we do in our school to try to build capacity with students and give them leadership opportunities, as highlighted up on the slide. But it's definitely one area where we would like to see more growth. We spent a lot of time digging into the survey data with the kids this year. We met with about 200 of them after the January survey to get their feedback, anecdotally about what their peers were saying, not what they were saying, but what their peers were saying and the responses, just try to get their take and understanding of how they were viewing what was happening at ELHS. We had some really good conversations. Hoping to use some of those conversations to set some of our professionals next year by incorporating more student voices into our classes.
Good. Mistakes?
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Right, I think we're moving to Birchland next. Mr. Pearson and Ms. Junga Andrew.
Good evening. I have selling tickets, but we'll try and play some ready nonetheless. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start off looking at the attendance numbers, just like the high school did. So we had 95% average daily attendance by the end of the year, which was a 7.7 chronic absenteeism rate. So this is a pretty significant drop from where we were in mid-cycle when we were at 12%. It's also an improvement over data from last year when we got full points from MCAS for our accountability. We were 8.5%, so it was reduced it even more. You can see here we only had 13 students that attended fewer than 85% of days. So we're pretty pleased with those numbers, and we can go to the next slide. We can see some of the things that I really believe it was the human touch. our mini attendance team, and I have to give a huge shout out to Trish Pereira, who is our student intervention coordinator. Lived on the phone, making contact with families that were chronically absent, party a lot, forming those relationships, coming up with plans for those kids. But also involved our MTSS champions, much like the high school. Also got involved in working with some kids that were particularly tough and having regular check-ins, story behind what was happening. So there's always something contributing to the attendance rather than just, I don't want to go to school. There's usually a pretty good reason behind that. We made use of the district attendance specialist for some of our difficult cases as well. Of course, we kept up with our letters every quarter of students that were on track to be chronically absent. But as I said, the reasons behind it, I think I mentioned the mid-cycle that we found there was a big component of mental health that was contributing to a lot of this. So we really focused on our relationship with River Valley, getting those kids some of the assistance needed so they feel a little bit more comfortable coming to school, getting to the root of the problems that were keeping them from attending school. And it's a partnership we're looking to grow. It's about finding space in the building for them, meeting with them later this week to see if I can magic up another space that they can have so that we can get more kids the services they need so that they'll be ready to come to school. Another big part of it, and you'll see more in our slides about inclusive culture, was about engagement. Just trying to make classes a little more engaging for the kids, makes the school experience, the Birchland experience, a little bit more of an engaging one. So part of that was also getting into partnerships with local businesses to get some incentives, to give kids kind of a reason to come to school. I know we had used Texas Roadhouse, we had a trampoline park, our PTO sponsored some things to give kids reasons, both short-term and long-term, kind of come to school and help bump those numbers up. And then another big part was making sure that all our absences were being entered correctly. I know we had some students that were in partial hospitalization situations that were showing up as absences for us, and when we got those corrected, that also helped contribute to our numbers, but we are really pleased. I think we were 14% a couple of years ago to kind of cut that in half in the space of less than 2 years. We're pretty pleased with how that's out for us. All right, we're going to go into some of the teaching and learning. So you'll see a lot of our iReady data here. So this is for reading our end of year. You can see the placement distribution and nice numbers when we compare it to the fall. Again, a big increase in students that are testing on grade level, a decrease in the number of students that are testing below their grade level. So it's always something that you want to see when you get to this. And we'll see the same thing in math on the next slide. We greatly increase while reducing the kids that are significantly level, including a huge 18% uptick in students that are mid or above grade level. Talk a little bit more about those reasons in just a minute. So the district SMART goals, Gordon said it's a pretty lofty goal to try to attain of 75% of students reaching their typical growth in ELA and math on the iReady and 30% reading and stretch growth. So how did we do? Well, it was, some things to grow and some things to celebrate when we look at our reading statistics. We did have 59% of our kids meet their typical growth, which was a little bit shy of what we'd like to have seen. So we have some things to look at to see how we can get that number up to where we want it to be. But we did hit our stretch growth. And we did have the 30% of people make it to that goal. So we're pleased with that. You can see our median number there was 150%. And you can see that we did really well, particularly with our younger students, getting them where they wanted to be. 67% of our sixth graders met their typical growth. Kind of tapers out as their enthusiasm for iReady dies a little bit by the time they get to 8th grade. But I think we're heading in the right direction there. So we're pretty pleased with those numbers, but recognize that we do have some things we can adjust next year to try and inch a little bit closer to that 75% that we want to be at. All right, see a little more reading data here. And what we're pleased with here is that our neediest kids, we grew most, the kids that below grade level 2 or 3 levels below where they should be, we grew them the most. We saw the big increases in their improved placement percentages in that group. So it means that our intervention classes are doing the job that they're designed to do. There you go. I wasn't lying to you, it's right there. Okay. Now, when we shift to math, actually the numbers get it's a little bit interesting case here. Math for a second. Again, we had slightly bigger numbers, 62% met their typical growth numbers. And we almost met the stretch growth. We were at 26% there. Annual growth number, the median was 122%. So again, we're growing them at each grade level, but we still have some strides we want to make. But when we get into the smaller groups, if you can go to the next slide for me. What's interesting here in reverse from what we see in the reading data is that we grew our kids the most who are at mid or above grade level. I know, Sarah, that you had mentioned how we coordinate with the high school to try and see what our kids need. And the big thing we had done this past year is kind of adjust the structure of our accelerated math programs and kind of reduce the number of kids that were in there down to one algebra group per team in 8th grade. And I think that's really what you're seeing here is we had kids that were really ready to move, were prepared for algebra, able to move at that quicker space. And they really reaped the benefits of that. And I think they saw huge, huge growth this year. So I think as we get maybe a couple more years of data on that, we can really, I think we'll see that trend confirmed. But it is something that we really looked at this year. And I know that going forward, we've been spending a lot of time this year trying to identify exactly which metrics contribute to students being successful in accelerated math. And I had sent something out to parents about looking at where they score on their iReady end of year, their MCAS data, their class grades, even their attendance, and trying to correlate all that into which kind of kids are going to be successful or going to be ready for that punishing pace of algebra. Well, the internet's ready for the punishing pace tonight. But it's something to look at. So, you know, we don't have unlimited time tonight, but anybody would ever like to come by, I can really walk you through that study of how we kind of broke down all the math numbers and really tried to identify the metrics of who's going to be successful when they go on to algebra. So we want those kids to be successful in high school. And the high school was telling us that a lot of our kids in our algebra program weren't necessarily successful when they got to high school, geometry yet. So obviously that's something that we need to fix. What skills do we need to focus on middle school level? And I think we did a good job of doing that this past year, as you see in those numbers there. All right. So we are in what iReady identifies as sweet spot in their quadrants there of having kids in high performance and high growth, both for reading and for math. So we're pleased to be there. That's where you want to be, the upper right. So we're doing a good job with that. Look to stay there as we move into the next school year. And you had asked about the projections for MCAS. So you can see our fall numbers there. We were projected to have 42% of our students being proficient on the MCAS, and by the spring, we had bumped that up to 54% of our kids. So we had a nice 12% bump there in kids that are ready to be proficient on MCAS. See if that projection's accurate in a couple of months, but it's a good number to see. We hope it's pointing in the right direction. And we'll see something similar for math where we had a really big growth. In the fall, we were at 24% of our kids projected to be proficient, 5%. So, you know, getting close to doubling up that number by the spring with our most recent diagnostic data. So we'll hope that continues to be accurate, maybe even better with their MCAS. Our students, I got to give them a lot of credit, particularly in 8th grade. They, in that month and a half span, they took 4 different MCAS content areas, some over multiple days. Then they took iReady diagnostics. So that they performed as well as they did on the diagnostic, given some of the testing fatigue. I salute them because that's a tall task as the weather's getting warmer. There's so many other things going on in school. So kudos to them. So what do we attribute a lot of this to? You know, I mentioned mid cycle that we had an iReady reset staff, kind of moved away from being just something that we were doing, particularly for math or ELA teachers. Why we do this? Having those MCAS projections was kind of a big why, showing that no matter what we do, this is projecting how we're going to do on the MCAS, which is the ultimate measuring stick for us, but also kind of establishing some norms about how we're approaching our iReady time that we have built into our schedule 2 days a week. It wasn't uniform across classrooms. Some people were handling it different than others. So we wanted to make sure that we were on the same page and that Natalie and I were a lot more visible in the classroom, checking with the kids, making sure that we were sticking to those norms so that we would have that good baseline data that was going to be accurate, that everybody was approaching it on the same level and understood the seriousness of why we're doing this. In addition, then we partnered with the high school. We identified some kids that were struggling and partnered them up with tutors from the NHS at the high school level. We had 25 kids that were doing that. It was something that went on weekly that was really cool to see the kids working. They were enthused about it, a little more engaging way for them to get that remediation that they needed. They liked working with the high school kids. I'd like to think the high school kids liked working with them. So it went well, and we'll probably look to revisit that again next year, maybe even start it a little bit earlier than we did. So thank you to Gary Wright, who's not here tonight, for helping us set that up, but it went well. We did the math labs. Some of you got to view those when you came to the school. think that helped really get student thinking at the forefront, making it visible, getting classes again to be a little bit more engaging, getting students up and really getting hands-on with their math. Instructional coaches, we had hyped our coaching cycles this year. We got all the way through all of our teachers doing a coaching cycle. The exit survey feedback was very good. People felt it was valuable. Trepidation about it being an evaluative process was kind of expressed. People liked that we had given them kind of a menu of things to choose from. They got some agency in choosing what they thought was going to work for them, and that the coaches were a good partner for them in helping them work on those skills, and then seeing those skills then translate to performance by our students. So they were very pleased with the coaching cycle, and next year we'll have to look at, I think, how we can expand that to our other areas. Coaches are just good academic coaches, and athletes need performance coaching just like anybody else. And if we look at it like that, it's not a threatening thing. We want everybody to be performing at their best, and coaching cycles were a big part of that. So we'll talk a little this summer about how we're going to refine it, see how we can expand it. Our coaches also met with our ELA and math teachers. They used the Atlas protocol to look at our iReady data after the mid-cycle to try to identify trends, what was happening there. That's really great because it kind of removes a lot of the judgment from it and allows us just to look at the numbers and say, what do we see here? Where can we improve? What are we proud of? So that was really effective. We identified some things that we were able to act on in the second half of the year. We also use iReady for mastery checks to improve our tier 1 instruction. So we've noticed sometimes that our grades don't always match up with our standardized testing scores. So mastery checks is a great way to bring that to the forefront before the end of the year. We take a standard that we've taught well in the classroom. We have the students take this independent assessment that's very, very MCAS aligned. And then we look at the data and see how the kids did. See what kind of trends have developed there. Are we struggling? Do we need to go back and reteach this? Were there areas of the standard that we didn't necessarily address? So that's been pretty valuable for us, and we want to expand that and make it an even more regular feature than what we were doing before. And of course, we started instituting a new enrichment class. We had students at a higher rate than ever testing out of iReady. So rather than having them read in their class, use it as a study hall, we built an enrichment class so we could help those kids work on some critical thinking, some collaborative things, some project-based learning so we could continue to grow. And I think you saw that some of our high performers still showing that great stretch growth and typical. We're pretty happy with our iReady stuff. We realize that we have some room to grow, but I think we have the foundation in place, and it's just a matter of pushing that work forward.
Right. So in regards to inclusive and supportive school culture, we focus on 2 areas. We wanted to make sure that students felt that they had supportive relationships and also that they felt more engaged in school. So you can see here, this is one of the results of our Panorama surveys given to students. In terms of supportive relationships, 91% of our school population felt that they had supportive and positive relationships with adults in the building. And so we're really happy to report that. That actually is an increase, a 2 percentage point increase from where we were on our winter survey. And, it's a small increase, but we're right there at the top. We're at the 80th to 99th percentile nationally. So, that just lets us know we are engaging with our students enough for them to feel supported and wanting to come to school. They feel like they can talk to a staff member. We, through our advisory program or enrichment, their regular content area teachers. I have so many kids even come to me, just, not always about a discipline situation, but just to share about what's going on in family life. And same with Mr. Pearson as well. So we're really happy about that. You can see the breakdown, of course, across our student demographics. And then, of course, in engagement, we aren't quite as high, so we know we need to do some work here. We're always looking for more ways to engage students. However, we did see a 6 percentage point increase, so we will take that. You can see, though, there is a gap between some of our student, demographics here. And so we want to figure out ways in which we can close the gap even further. But we have done some, so if you can go to the next slide. One of the things that we did, as you all are well aware of, we did partner with the Academic Leadership Association, and we wanted to not just focus on the students, but we also wanted to really focus on building the teacher capacity to improve their relationships with students. Not always about the content. Sometimes it's how you relate to the students and then access the content. And so we realized that through some previous, surveys from students, that some students didn't feel like their teachers were understanding of them or the relationships weren't as strong. So this is where we brought Valenti Tulloch in for the Academic Leadership Association to give a year-long PD program for our teachers. And so he came in and shared some strategies and skills that teachers can expand on. He had them reflect on their own personal experiences quite a bit, how those experiences tied into maybe their teaching style, looking at different ways of relating to students, and maybe how some of the things that they might have been doing might be actually counterintuitive to what you want to see in your classroom. And so teachers were really reflective. A lot. Every single session had teachers reflecting on their personal experience of students and internally ways that they can improve. And so as a result, by the end of the year, about 70% of our teachers felt that what they gained was very valuable. And you can see them using those strategies throughout their teaching. And then over 80% of the staff said, you know what, I think other teachers and other schools would absolutely benefit from his service. So we're really happy with that. And then in addition to using the Academic Leadership Association for the support of our teachers, we also have them running mentorship groups for their actual students. So the first go round, we started with some at-risk boys. And Valenti actually took that on himself. So he actually was in the classroom. He met with the students twice a week, individually and as a group, and met with us as a leadership team. We came up with some different behavioral metrics and academic metrics just so that we can start to measure their growth based on their experiences with him. And those students absolutely loved every bit of that program and their interaction with him. I mean, they were like, when is Valenti coming today? Are we going to have lunch with him today? Or telling us about Mr. Junga, I got this on my report card, or, really just wanting us to see the updates, participating in study halls and things like that. And then he incentivized a lot of behaviors and academics by providing outside trips for the students that they can earn if they hit their different benchmarks. And according to our data, every single student of the year that started as at risk in our behavioral category ended as proficient. So there were certain things that they had to meet, couldn't get so many write-ups or more than so many write-ups in a particular time frame, 3-month period or something like that. At the end, every single student finished as proficient, and 66% of the students that started at risk academically also finished the year proficient. And so he just took them on a trip. What was it, Six Flags?
They went bowling. They also did,
Yeah.
they got to see Malcolm X's daughter speak
Yep.
at the Black History Month this day. He would take to the Hampton County District Court
Court,
office to see the legal system at work. So there's a lot of growth stuff. And
How many kids are in this?
we have 16 to 18 that are in it overall. And it was a chance for him also to model a lot of the stuff that he was showing their teachers about being a warm demander. I guess the big term a lot of us took away from it, being a warm demander. So to see it firsthand, and like I said, seeing the success from the students was fantastic.
And we started with the boys, like I said, but then by mid-year, we adopted a girls group because we realized we have a lot of girls that are struggling with some behaviors as well as academically and social interactions. And so his wife, who was also a partner with him in his organization, came in and she took on a girls group. She just had a baby, so that's not happening right this minute, but she did take that on, and the girls, again, also really started to flourish in that group, and you could see the changes immediately. We're really excited to continue that in the upcoming year. And then, as Mr. Pearson mentioned already, our coaching cycle is very, very successful. We didn't want to just support our students. We wanted to make sure that our teachers felt supported. And they absolutely did through the coaching cycles. So again, it wasn't a punitive thing. It was something where they had an option, a menu of choices. How would you like to utilize a coach to help improve your practice? Do you just need a thought partner? Do you want me to sit in the room and give you actual feedback that I'm observing for a particular skill that you're working on in class? Are you looking to see if I'm being equitable in my practices with my students, in terms of who I'm calling on or how I'm addressing students, whatever you want? those teachers got a chance to select support that they wanted. And then the coaches delivered that for like 2 weeks at a time. And then they gave some feedback and the teachers felt that that was very valuable. So we are looking to expand that. One thing I did want to circle back for the third bullet down, I didn't get a chance to mention, it's not on the screen, but part of, part of our goal in regards to engagement, I feel like is not just helping the students move from the at-risk category out of the at-risk category, but then moving them beyond to like helping them learn how to become leaders. So one of the things that we did this year was create a partnership with Maple Shade, with Connor. And we took 2 of our students who were in this at-risk group and gave them an opportunity to serve as mentors for other students of color at Maple Shade. Students who might have already had some, they might have shared some things that indicated that they're not feeling as supported as students. So Mr. Martin wanted to really figure out how can we better support them? And we figured what better way than to have some older students at a school where they will be coming soon, embrace them, have similar conversations, break bread with them, have some games and just general fellowship to make them feel more welcomed. And that was a total success, would you say?
So I just gotta say, I'm so grateful for Natalie and for the students of Birchland because they just made this such a wonderful experience. It was every other week.
Yeah.
Every week, my kids would come up to me and would ask if this was the week because they were just beaming. They loved it.
Yeah.
It was definitely a highlight this year. And Natalie was fantastic. She was great. She deserves all of the accolades.
Oh gosh. Made me cry again. It's okay. Thank you so much, Connor. But again, the opportunity was also really to take 2 of those students who were in this group and as well as 2 other students. So we had 2 girls and 2 boys. And to have them serve as mentors. So I kind of led it in the beginning and then I had weekly meetings with them to plan the next session where they would pick the activity, the conversation, the topics, all of those things and the games and whatnot with the young people. So we're looking, the kids said, can we do this next year? So we have to figure out the logistics of what that looks like. Do we have a new student population? But it was really nice because at the step up day, automatically the kids recognized, oh my goodness, they remembered us and we're very excited to even come into the building just based on that previous experience. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, I think you had mentioned it already about our MTSS team. In other words, we wanted to engage the students more and also make sure that they felt that they were supported. So we again looked at some of the data, some of the panorama responses, divvied up some of the students and basically went out to meet with them, have some check-ins with them to figure out what are their needs, what led them to respond in certain ways that they did and figure out better ways to support them throughout the year. So additional check-ins or any other interventions as needed. And so that is how we have been supporting students. Again, if you have any extra ideas of ways to engage, please share them our way because we do want to get that engagement number up. We do have some things I won't share now that are in the works for in the fall, hopefully, to further engage not just our at-risk students, but some of our top performers.
New trend.
New trend. A lot of times we spend a lot of our energy at the bottom half, really trying to push everyone up. And then the students at the top that are doing everything that they've been asked to do don't always feel as supported either. So we really want to find ways to continue to support them and of course that middle group as well. But I just want to say thank you guys for all of your support this year. You guys have been amazing for me, Steve and I, and we just wanted to show our appreciation. So thank you. Any questions?
I have a question about the Academic Leadership Association. Is that yearly? You said you're going to get, no, it was like a one-time thing.
Partnership. We started with them last year, mentoring a small group of boys. And again, after tracking the data, we saw a lot of success increasing attendance in behavior metrics and also academics. So we wanted to continue that this year and we added the PD piece. I knew that he had developed a series of PDs. There were 9 different sessions. So we worked with Gordon, thankfully, we had some ESSER funds to bring him in to work with our staff. And then we, halfway through the year, decided we wanted to expand the mentorship thing to our female students because we had a group who were experiencing a lot of the same struggles. So we grew it there. So next year, though, a lot of the ESSER funds aren't there anymore. We're going to continue with the mentorship groups. The PD will look for building leaders to keep that going, the lessons that we learned, probably with a refresher on a building-based day. But there was some really good stuff out of that. We still, like I said, the exit surveys were fantastic. People took a lot out of it. So we'll look to keep that going next year. Things like creating third spaces, getting students in helping to design goals for your curriculum, just restoring broken relationships, all really good things. Even if you're a veteran teacher, you can always revisit. And a lot of this was, looking at groups that are marginalized as well and how their experience might be a little bit different. Now you might have to do things a little bit differently with that group of students.
Steve, you mentioned River Valley, the roughly percentage of students or number of students.
Oh my goodness, I wish if I'd come prepared, I could tell you, but we never have enough. So
20%, 50%, roughly?
I will get back to you.
I only ask because it continues to grow, sounds like.
Yeah, it's always growing. We have more and more kids that need it. We have a long waiting list. Like I said, I'm meeting with them this week. They said they have an additional therapist for me if I can find a spot. They're very particular. They want to be in one place all day, and sometimes it's tough in the middle school where we're sharing rooms. So I got to play a little bit of musical chairs and figure out how I can do that. But the more we can add, the better, because it seems like that number post-COVID is always growing with students that have some kind of struggle, whether it be anxiety or depression, and it's impacting attendance, school behavior, everything. So once we address that, I think we're going to continue to see improvement in all those other facets.
Your vector proficiency looks like it's trending towards similar MCAS scores as we had last year.
Yep. The only one thing I'm not sure about there is it says proficiency of students show no additional growth, and I wasn't entirely sure what that meant. I was going back and forth with that with Heather.
At the end of the year, they'll only show you that because there's no opportunity.
Yeah, no opportunity to grow. So I'm not sure what that means, because I was able to show you before the mid-cycle if they hit typical growth, if they hit stretch growth, and I'm not able to show you that now. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the
And this doesn't include writing, so there's a chance that the writing scores could also give a slight as well. So, okay. Right.
Any other questions for us?
Thank you both.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Paper, scissors.
I'll go.
You have hotter air out there, Mr. Thompson.
Oh, he's hot.
I think so.
It's open
Open the door.
Follow the rules.
All right.
Open meeting.
Oh, we thought you were cold, hot, and we're like, where's
I thought you were.
Is he changing the temperature?
I thought you were thinking airflow.
Nope.
All right, good evening, everybody. To talk about Maple Shade, as I've stated all year long, we have focused very intensely on the attendance piece. We have increased our outreach to parents throughout the course of the year. We utilize the Panorama system to identify the students who are at most at risk for attendance issues, and that allowed us to be able to identify those students and enter into conversations with the families in order to best support the students with whatever it was that was going on, whether it was illness, whether it was school avoidance, or what have you. But as you can see, we reduced our number from 0.9 to 8.8. So we're very, very happy with this. And then with everything with Maple Shade, we very proud of being able to create a safe and inclusive environment that is reflected in Panorama scores, which you can see beginning on the next. Yep. Okay, so everything that's in green are the areas that improved since the fall, or since the winter results. Everything that is not in the green either stayed the same or just went down, but the numbers are small if they went down. So the bedrock of my belief in education is the importance of building relationships with students, with teachers, with parents, and as you can see, this number is that supportive relationship piece, because once you build that. The relationship, it's like a bridge of trust across which you can convey anything. So our students feel as though they are supported, that they have relationships with key members in the staff, that they feel safe. And I think that speaks to the volume and just speaks to how well our staff works at being a safe space for our students. Also with school safety, going to school in 2024 is different than it was, when we were going to school. There is definitely a heightened awareness around school safety. And I think that trickles down to our kids, even though we want to protect them as much as possible. But we, at the end of the day, the most thing is that we ensure that our students are safe. And I think that as well, that they know that when they enter the school, that they feel safe. Clearly, I want that number to be 100%. I will continue. It is 100%, but it was moving in the right direction. So again, breaking down the supportive relationships piece, exactly, of the three questions that were asked, increased, and even the one that did not increase, that's still a high number, so I'm proud of it. So 88% of our students, have a trusted member from the staff that they can count on, that they can rely, and from grades 3 to 5, that's incredibly important for our students. For our students entering into Maple Shade as third graders, having that person that they can trust, that's important. And 5th grade is a time of transition, and it's a time where they are going to take their next step in terms of growth and independence, and it can be scary. So having that person that they can trust is important for them to be able to access their education and be able to push themselves in the direction. All right. So that number, that 87%, I feel like I'm a part of the community at my school. That to me speaks to the work around equity inclusion that we have done this year. Much like Natalie had said, and I cannot thank her enough for allowing our students the opportunity to be able to go over to Birchland. But I want every one of my students to feel as though Maple Shade is their school. And I want to give them the platform that they need. And I want Maple Shade to be a safe space for them so that they feel as though they are part of a larger community. And that's something that we have worked hard at all year long. We have been able to look at our mission statement. We've been able to derive from our mission statement something tangible for our students to buy into. So at Maple Shade, we are made in the shade, which means that each one of our students strives to be hardworking, actively engaged, determined to succeed, and empathetic in all that they do. And I think that trickles into each aspect of the school, whether it's their academics, the way in which that they interact with one another, the way in which they interact with adults, and it allows us as a school individually and teacher to teacher and student to student how to be able to provide the necessary education around each one of those components of our slogan in order to support whatever it is. Whether it is engaging in high levels of education, pushing through, whether it is peer-to-peer relationships. But that E piece, that empathy piece, I think is reflected here in the part of my school because they are giving themselves that respect for their shoes. In terms of school safety, at the beginning of the year, we did a lot of work around bullying. Carolyn McBride, our school psychologist, was able to procure a anti-bullying grant that allowed all of the social emotional lessons during the month of October, which is anti-bullying month. So we did a lot of focus on that, and our students recognize that that we have made an effort. 93% have recognized that here at Maple Shade, we're not tolerating bullying, that they feel as though they can go to someone if they see it. So these numbers are all moving in the right direction, and that I think supports that 87% of feeling like they are part of a community at Maple Shade. And positive feelings. Our students self-reported that they were happier and safer. So again, with safety, 60% isn't what I want it to be, but it did move in the right direction. And 73%, again, I want that to be higher, but it moved in the right direction as well. And challenging feelings, again, these numbers moved in the right direction. So we had less students feeling sad and worried. But this number here is something that I'm incredibly proud of, all of the students in the building, for all of the teachers. this is very important that, especially during the grade range of 3 to 5, that they're building in the skills necessary to demonstrate perseverance, and they're not just giving up on their learning, and they're not just giving up on themselves. So this number increased in the right direction. And I think this is indicative of all of the work that we have done over the last 2 years around building a growth mindset, building supports around productive struggle and resilience. For 2 years, we have had the academic venturing award to celebrate students who aren't necessarily getting it in class, but not giving up on themselves. Because much like adventure, learning can be both fun and scary. So when you don't know something, and not giving up on yourself, not giving up on the learning, and pushing through and just continually trying, supporting that and building incentives around that and a celebratory nature around that, I hope instills within them this belief that being smart isn't knowing the answer. It's not giving up when you don't know the answer. That's important as they continue to make it through the grades. So for teaching and learning, we're going to start to get into the iReady scores. So if you go to the next slide. So as you can see, if you compare our reading scores at the end of the year, which I do want to highlight again, the end of the year for these purposes, we're talking about March. So we saw growth. We saw an increased numbers moving in the right direction, which I want to celebrate. But I do want to recognize that had we taken the iReady in late May or June, these numbers would have been larger. But our students are working hard with reading, with the Wit and Wisdom curriculum that is expected, and they're working through that, which increases the level of rigor, and they are having high quality academic discussions with each other around their reading. Math, as you can see, we also saw significant increase, and a lot of this was bolstered by a lot of the conversations that we had around math instruction this year. So it was reported previously that we had the learning labs, which I think was very successful. Each one of our teachers engaged in the learning labs. We were able to observe each other. And there was immediate takeaways and implementation of the practices from the learning labs, whiteboards, to the extent that we've had to replace the vertical whiteboards in some classes already due to the use and the take this professional development practice. So our students are collaborating with one another. They are having high quality conversations around what the math problems, what math means to them, how they're coming up with the solution to the problem. They're pushing each other, they're pushing themselves. And as you can see from the next slide, this is also, not this slide, sorry. No, actually go to the next slide, I can go back to that. But all of our math work is also supported by our ST Math initiative. So last year, at this time, we had the end of the year goal of 80% syllabus completion for ST Math. And we came just short. I believe that we got 77 or 78%. This year, not only did we achieve our 80% of ST Math, but very early on in the spring, we exceeded it. So we ended the year with 87% completion throughout the building, which is great. That is a testament to how hard our students worked at this. They kept themselves on track. They had their own weekly goals. They knew exactly where they were. And this is all because our teachers worked tirelessly to ensure that our students knew exactly where they were. We also reduced the amount of students who were below 40%. Last year, 22% of our students were below 40%. This year, only 10% of our students were below 40%, which again, speaks volumes of how hard our teachers worked to incorporate ST Math and support ST Math. And also, we did what we could to just celebrate it as much as possible. So we had For the students that achieved 100%, they were 100% club award winners. They received a certificate. They got their picture taken. The Persevering Penguin Award winners, these are students who might not have gotten 100%, but much like the Academic Adventure Award, they did not give up on themselves. They continued to try, they continued to push through. They were featured on the morning announcements. We had the March Madness tournament to increase competition throughout the building amongst the home rooms, which was fun. We sent home postcards. We had certificates for students who hit their high scores. We had incentives in place for goals throughout the year. So when students hit the 20% syllabus completion, Gigi, the mascot, visited. It's like Mickey Mouse coming to Maple Shade. And then for students, once they got to 60%, we had a movie day in the building. So, we really supported and celebrated ST Math. And as you can see, this was a big point of success throughout the course of the year.
Want to go back to these?
Yeah, I don't have much to say on it. Again, we did take the iReady earlier in the year. I don't think this is necessarily indicative of how well our students are going to do on the MCAS test. I think that if we had taken it later in the spring, these numbers would be, we would see a higher proficiency rate. But I will dive into this over the summer to see what I can pull out and have any supports in place in the fall if we need anything.
They're similar to last year's MCAS.
Mhm.
Slight uptick for reading, though. It looks like they're projecting you to be about, or the students to be about 4 percentage points higher. Last year was 33% proficiency.
Yeah. Okay, so inclusive and supportive culture and climate, I touched upon that a little bit with our panorama survey results, but you can go to the next slide, Heather. Maple Shade is just a school where, we are comprised of three, we're very lucky. We are very lucky that we have the students that buy into Maple Shade. They care about Maple Shade very deeply. We have teachers who care very deeply about Maple Shade, and we have parents who care very deeply about Maple Shade. And I think all of these culminate with moments like this, where we are able to celebrate the culture of our own backgrounds, of creativity, to create a warm and friendly climate for our students and the larger community. So, this year in the spring, our Maple Shade players, our drama production, saw the performance of The Lion King, which was incredible. It was just an incredible thing to see. Like 70 Maple Shade students involved. It took place at Birchland. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you to the custodians at Birchland who helped out. Thank you to Don Mackey. Thank you, Don, for all of the work that you contributed during that. Thank you to all of the parents and to Carolyn McBride, Amy Binder, Christine Lohan, and Kelly Petazzoni for all of the work, for allowing a creative outlet for our students who engaged at high levels, and to just be able to see what these kids were able to do was truly inspiring. We had our learning carnival, which allowed our parents to come in and be able to learn in fun ways with their students, with their children during the evening. We had the solar eclipse of the heart, which was just a fun event for the kids. We were lucky that the eclipse took place during a time when, our kids were still in school. So we were able to all go outside together as a school, put the glasses on and watch the celestial event while listening to Bonnie Tyler on a loop nonstop for a half an hour. Just leading up in the day, it was just celebratory, students, it was just a science focus all throughout the day. They learned about the eclipse, they followed it, on the news. It was just science focus. It was just a great special day of learning. We had our spring band and chorus concert, which was just, shows another level of talent for our students. For the color run, I'm very grateful for Casey Hodges, our PE teacher, who, at the beginning of the year, organizes a fall field day, and then the year culminates with a color run, which again, opens up the doors, the proverbial doors of the field for all of the parents who want to attend. We have great parental support. I think that's just because the parents really want to squirt their kids with color as they run by. But it is a lot of fun. It supports physical health and education, and it just puts a smile on the face. It's a community event. It's a full school event, and it's a wonderful time to just get outside, run, smile, get wet while it's warm outside, and have fun with parents and teachers and students. It's wonderful. And then the balloon toss, I got 300 plus water balloons thrown at me, which is a great fundraising opportunity. But again, I had 300 water balloons thrown at me. Thankfully, it wasn't as cold outside as it was last spring. It was really, really nice. But it's a great event. We had our Look for the Good assembly, which is another outlet for our social emotional learning. It empowers our students to present and instills them with a level of confidence that I certainly didn't have when I was in 5th grade. And that goes back to the work that Carolyn McBride does in being able to instill our students with that level of confidence so that they are being able to create a student-run assembly that benefits everybody. We had our staff versus staff volleyball game, which brings everybody out to the high school, which is always a lot of fun. We had our 4th grade immigration simulation and parent showcase, which puts our students through the Ellis Island experience, and then they're able to report on it and give a presentation, this interactive, dramatic recreation to the parents. We had our 5th grade talent show on the last day of school, which again, our students are multifaceted, and it's great to be able to just see what they're able to showcase. We also increased the amount of field trips that we had. Our 5th grade went to Smith College. Our 3rd grade went to the Reptile Museum in Enfield, and our 4th grade went to the Science Center. So the more opportunities our students have to, go out into the world, I think that it just creates for a fun learning experience. And then, I've spoken about this before throughout the different presentations, but it was a work in progress. And since the mid-cycle presentation, we were able to implement this into our morning announcements, which is our Culture Corner, which is our platform on the morning announcements run by students for students in order to allow our students to be able to showcase their backgrounds, their heritage, their culture. Because again, going back to that panorama data, our students feel as though they are part of a community in our school. I think a lot of that does speak to the work around Culture Corner, to just showcase just the different heritages and background we have that make up our little school, and to be able to allow our students to celebrate it with each other. And then, in terms of just school pride for what we have and what we're able to provide our kids, we had 88% of our students staying after. 88% of our students stayed after for at least one school club after school, which just shows just a level of involvement that our kids have and a level of dedication that our teachers have in being able to provide these opportunities for our students.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Connor. I appreciate it.
We have Mountain View and Mrs. Antonelli coming up.
Ready?
So I'm going to start with our first goal, talking about creating a safe, nurturing, equitable, and inclusive learning environment. And talking about attendance, which I'm very proud of this year. Attendance is that we always try to make Mountain View fun and engaging place where they want to be every day. So on the next slide, you'll see that our average daily attendance rate was 95.5 as of last Monday. That's from Panorama. So we went slightly over our goal of 95%. We had a very unusual rash of pneumonia cases in the last month of school that we actually consulted with Dr. Clark over because it was quite an alarming. I think we were somewhere around 14 kids had pneumonia in the last month of school, which also did not, I have one staff member with it, but we also had a very strange virus that went around the last 3 weeks, and I was hit with it also. It had to be a virus because I was at antibiotics and it didn't work. But so even though we had quite a few kids out for several days, I'm happy that we still made our average daily attendance. What I'm even more proud of is if you look at the middle bar, the chronic absenteeism, in 2022, which was still COVID, we had 22.5% of our kids chronically absent. Last year, we dropped to 5.9, which was a huge drop, but we were back to normal. And this year we're at 2.9. So I can't really ask for better than that, that we've dropped that far in this time. So I'm very proud of what we've done. And I can't say that I've had an attendance team because I haven't. Again, I think it's just a matter of it was not COVID and the Mountain View students want to be at school. So I'm really happy with that. The next, I feel like these two goals complement each other. So in this goal, we're talking about developing partnerships with our students, staff, where we want everyone to belong. And in this, today, I'm going to be talking to you about surveys that we did this year. But we truly feel that if we don't have strong connections with the community, the staff, the students, and the families, that none of our success would be possible. I did give Greg a list of all the events that we did have this year, much to put on a slide, but I would like to point out that one of the events on there, and I hope I'm not repeating myself, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but our Spirit Squad, which used to be called the Pioneers, for those of you who have been around for a while, it's a student representative from each classroom in the school. They stay after school twice a month and work with Miss Campbell and Mrs. Shea on community service projects and outreach. And one of the most successful ones this year was that they went to the senior center twice. Mr. Mackey was there, I believe, filming. They took part in the senior center's podcast where they interview each other and talk about what things were like in their time. And so our kids interviewed the seniors on the podcast, and Mr. Mackey filmed it, and it's on the YouTube channel. But I thought the most heartwarming thing was one of our students came back after being there. They got to stay for lunch and they served lunch to the seniors, but one of our students said it was the best field trip that they ever went on. So they really enjoyed spending time with the seniors. So I just wanted to point that out. On the next slide, these are our panorama results. And as I've told you in the past, we feel like panorama gives an overall percentage, which is why we give the SABRS, which allows us to identify how students specifically answer questions. We gave that twice this year, and I shared the results with you at the last two presentations. So the panorama positive feelings one, I had to do a deep dive because that's not reflective in the school surveys, which you have the data ahead of time, but I looked at the questions, and Connor actually had them up on the screen, and I felt that our students just maybe don't grasp what those questions are asking. So the ones that were in that section were how often in the last week they felt excited, happy, loved, and safe. It didn't clarify if that was at school or at home. I don't know how many times I felt excited in the last week, but I think that's a little I think it's a little misleading. Because if you look at our data from our school surveys, which are surveys that, on the next slide, Heather, and these are the student results. And I had 207 students, which is about 75% of the students answered these within the last month. And I don't see the same data in this that I see in the Panorama. This is anonymous, also just like Panorama, but me being the very direct and let's get things done quickly. The responses are limited to I agree or I disagree. So there were some questions that had sometimes depending on the question, and you'll see that in some of the other results. But, 95% of the kids say they're happy being at Mountain View, 98 feel welcome, and 96 feel safe. And I just didn't see those same responses in Panorama. I think these are just clearer statements for the kids to answer. But not only that, if you look at the data on the next slide, which is from the parents, and I had 121 parents or families, I should say, answer, which is about half of our families at Mountain View. They're the same, pretty much percentage wise, the responses that 96% of the kids are happy. They feel welcome at the school, the parents, they know their child feels safe. So I feel that because these surveys are so close, and they're also anonymous and we're taken at different times, that this is a more accurate representation than what I saw in the Panorama results. On the next slide, I put them, this is the staff survey. I did switch it a little, so it's a little different in your packet, sorry. So I had 43 staff members answer, which is also about 75% of the staff. And you can see where I put most of the time was an option on some of those. And again, the percentages are relatively the same as the kids and the families. So I'm confident that these are accurate responses to the surveys. And these surveys I gave out prior to COVID. Once COVID hit, I had a different one when we were remote. And then I kind of got out of the habit of it because we were using Panorama and Savers. But I did put in my SMART goals this year that I would do these surveys. So these are the results. And then the next one is just a graph. So you can see I did ask the parents what the most effective form of communication would be for them. So emails and texts, definitely one out. And we are actually learning tomorrow from Power School how to use their platform for sending out those kind of messages. So this is reinforced that. Any questions about the attendance or the? So on the rest of the slides, I will be talking about the teaching and learning goal. Data for iReady, as everyone has already stated, at the elementary level did not change that much because of when we gave the test. In the fall, we had 45% of students performing on grade level in reading and 31% in math, and we wanted to increase that by 30% for growth. It didn't happen. Math, we came close. We were at 26% already in March. In reading, we were only at 16%. But again, the students still had 3 more months of learning.
Sorry, did you want the slide up?
Sure, that's fine, sorry. Had we had 3 more months of teaching before taking it, possibly we would have made the goal or come closer than we did in March. This is our intervention data. We had 23 students receiving reading intervention this year, and they all remained in intervention all year. However, 74% of them showed significant growth on the iReady in March, as opposed to where they were in September. In math, we had 19 students receiving intervention. 6 of them were released from intervention by February, and the students that remained, 75% of them showed significant growth by the March iReady diagnostic. And I have our projected proficiency. I Mine are also very similar to what our MCAS scores were last year. So reading right now is predicted to be 35%. Last year, our MCAS proficiency was 36%. And for math, it's predicted to be 38%. And our MCAS proficiency last year was 39. I am very hopeful that it will be higher than that, given that we were still dealing with COVID in learning last year, and also because of the timing of when the iReady was given in March to come up with these numbers. So I'm hopeful that next year's MCAS will be. I didn't want to do that as fast as I could. I know, we didn't take care of a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie.
And Ms. Lodi and Ms. Shea.
Try to go quick too, since we're going into hour 3. So similar to the other schools, we're going to start off with our supporting the whole child. As you know, big focus on attendance. Not exclusive to Long Meadow. It's something we have seen across the state that they haven't come down since COVID. Looking at our attendance rates at school prior to the interventions that we put in place this year, we were still pretty high at about 18.4% chronic absenteeism last school year. So our goal was to reduce this by at least 3% in line with district goals. And we are very happy to report that we've seen a pretty significant decrease in that. I pulled up the DESE data and it had showed 8.6%, which I had presumed was end of year data until I spoke a minute ago and shared that that was March 1st data. So I had to jump in Panorama and see how we did since then. And I'm happy to report that we're even lower now. According to Panorama, we are down at 7%, which is a significant improvement of about 11.4% reduction in our chronic absenteeism rate. And our daily attendance rate, with our goal being 95%, I'm confident that we were at 94.9. What did we do in order to achieve this? We shared a lot of this back at our mid-cycle, so I'll go really quickly through this part. We sent out a letter to all families in November, really detailing that this is not just an ELPS issue, that this is a statewide issue, but what we were going to do as a school system and a school to address it. And then we did monthly attendance letters each month. Every student who had 5 or more absences received a letter. And you can see the number of letters that we sent out up on the screen there grew kind of exponentially as the year went on. And that is due in part because the 110, I think it says, in December, we only added another 60 going into the following month because those same 110 received the letter again. Just because you got it once didn't mean you're not going to get it again. So you got monthly reminders of what your child's attendance rate was. And then in addition to that, we did a lot of referrals to our district care coordinator. We did 19 over the course of the year, and one that had been closed out that we reopened because we saw a sudden change in their attendance rates again. So I think all of these things together really helped. I know the letters promoted a lot of communication from home back to the school, asking questions about it, and started a lot of conversations with us. What are you going to do a little differently next year? I'm always thinking ahead. We'd like to start sooner. We didn't start this. That first set of letters didn't go out till December 1st. We'd like to start right away in September, making that clear right from the very first month of school what our expectations are. And another thing we've been putting a lot of thought into is how can we get teachers more involved in this process? Because Lauren and I pretty much took this all on ourselves this year. We really wanted to kind of see where each kid was and have them on our radar, but we also would like to have teachers be more involved in that. One thing that's different about our school as compared to other schools is we have the littles. It's usually not a school refusal. It's usually parents. So in doing things like attendance incentives for the kids doesn't necessarily get them there and can sometimes set them up for disappointment. And I feel bad about that because it's not their fault at 5 years old that they're not getting to school. One of the things that I did hear both ELHS and Burke Children talk about, which piqued my interest, and I already made myself a note, is the idea of the attendance champions and having teachers be attendance champions. So I started thinking about what would that look like at our age group. So something I'll put a little more thought into. Another piece of our goal, which you'll see on the next slide there under supporting the whole child, was really focused on social emotional learning. So what have we done around that this year? As you know, we've reinstated our SEL program, hired a SPED teacher, reallocated paras, developed a program description. We also did professional development. We had a heavy focus on that this year because, as I've shared for 2 straight years now, we've seen a really significant increase in the number of students that are very dysregulated. We had probably the hardest time in my 14 years as an administrator doing class placement going into next year, just trying to split kids up and make sure that there was no one room that had an abundance of students with challenges. So we brought in some PD, including some PD on trauma. And then the district also had PD in November and January on the regulated classroom, which I shared a little bit about last time. Very excited about that workshop and looked into how we could get it at Meadowbrook. And in doing so, I came across the train the trainer model, reached out to Heather, who was very supportive of that. So we ended up moving forward as a district with that. And each of the 5 schools is going to have a team being trained in this approach. And our team at Meadowbrook is going to consist of one of our school counselors, occupational therapist, and a classroom teacher, which I think is a pretty dynamic combination, considering the nature of this training. They finished up their training in late May. And they're going to be providing at Meadowbrook initial training in August. The reason I felt very strongly that that needed to happen during our August PD days is it's the one time we have everybody. We have all of our paras, we have our related service providers, everybody's in the room because I feel that strongly about this training and that it will have a positive impact on our students if we can implement some of these things. And then I purchased all the teacher guidebooks to go along with that. And Mr. Hudson, one of our counselors, and I wrote a eLeaf grant together to hopefully get some of the hands-on materials that accompany the program. So fingers crossed for that. And we also had expanded with River Valley, similar to some of the other schools, because we're seeing this increase in students with mental health challenges and a lack of services out in the community for this. So we moved from 2 days to 3 days and have serviced a total of 23 students this year through River Valley. We currently still have 7 pending referrals at this time. 2 of them are incoming kindergarten students, so we're already trying to be proactive through our kindergarten screening process. We identified a couple kids right away that we think are going to need that support. Speaking a little bit to the idea that there's not a lot of supports and services out in the community. Happy news, but sad news. One of our counselors has decided to resign her position, and it's going to be a devastating loss to our school. She is by far one of the most skilled school adjustment counselors I have worked with in my entire career in education. I'm also very happy for her and for the community because she's opening a private practice in town, which is fantastic. So hopefully we'll get preference and sneaking some Meadowbrook kids into her. So that's one school adjustment counselor position that we need to fill. And we were also allocated a new position for school adjustment counselor this year, which I think is going to be a huge support for us. Because of the level of social emotional needs, the 4 of us, the 2 counselors and Lauren and I spent all year just being reactive, running around trying to put out fires. And we didn't have time to get to a lot of the proactive supports we typically have in place, those tier 2 level supports that our counselors used to do very frequently. They just fell to the wayside while we were busy running around trying to help kids in the moment. So hopefully with that 3rd counselor, we'll be able to better support that tier 2 and help bring a reduction in some of our social emotional needs.
Okay, this brings us to teaching and learning. As a reminder, our SMART goal was focused on implementing all newly adopted evidence-based curricula. This was to ensure that all students are engaged, prepared for success, and provided with relevant content that builds background knowledge, as well as exposes students to diverse perspectives. So the next slide is a comparison of iReady reading data from fall to spring. And again, that data, the spring data is from March. You can see that it shows a 36% increase in students at or above grade level in reading, a 29% decrease in students 1 year below grade level, and a 10% decrease in students 2 years below grade level respectively. And that exceeds our goal of 30% increase. If we take a deeper dive, we can see that this trend is true for each of the domains. So from the fall, we have increased the number of students at or above grade level and have decreased the numbers in the below grade level categories for all domains. Phonological awareness increased by 17% for students at or above grade level. Phonics had a 28% rise in students at or above grade level. Frequency words went up 29%, and that's up from an 8% increase from the fall to the winter. Vocabulary increased 21%, and Meadowbrook students have made a 23% gain in overall reading comprehension this year. And similar to reading, our goal for math was to increase the amount of students at or above grade level by at least 30%. And looking at the fall to spring iReady comparison, you will note a 38% increase in students at or above grade level, a 23% decrease in students scoring 1 grade level below, and a 15% decrease for students 2 or more grade levels below. If we look at the math data by domain, you will notice that the trend is also similar to the one in reading. We have increased our numbers at or above grade level on all domains, as well as decreased our numbers for students below grade level. Numbers of operations was a 36% increase for students at or above grade level. Algebra moved 33% in the right direction. Measurement and data saw an increase of 29%. And geometry rose to 21% of students on or above grade level. So if we move to the next slide, it talks about interventions. This year, 96 students were serviced for literacy, and 13 of those students exited. 61 were serviced for math, and 24 of those students exited. If we think about how we got here, we thought about our coaches. They really have done a lot to support individual teachers as well as teams in implementing the new curriculum. In addition, we shared in February, our staff have engaged in quite a bit of professional development around the topics, including focused implementation of small group instruction for literacy, math learning labs, implementing practices that promote thinking classrooms in mathematics. We also continued to refine our use of collaborative planning time to increase educator capacity to collaboratively plan, analyze assessment data, reflect and share on their varied skills. This included data dives around foundational skills to help groups of teachers strategize and plan for their next steps. If we look ahead, as Heather shared earlier, at the elementary level, we will be working to provide a greater degree of coherence with the new curricular resources. As part of this process, we'll be looking more closely at things such as pacing, data collection, and our universal screeners. In addition, for interventions, we will continue working to make sure that our program follows a structured literacy format that dovetails our new curricular resources. So one next step that we will be taking in this area is to begin utilizing decoding duos. And these are structured lessons that are designed to support foundational skills, including reading accuracy and automaticity, as well as passage comprehension for students. So they aren't necessarily specific decodable readers, but they go along and just help teachers structure their lessons around decodable readers.
When I looked back at the data comparison from last year, it didn't strike me till just now. I was a little disappointed that we didn't make greater gains than we had last year. And it didn't dawn on me at the time that the data we were comparing was from March as compared to where we were at last year. So I'd be really curious to see what our iReady scores would have looked like if we had done them a little later in the year. So just something that crossed my mind after the fact. similar to the attendance data, I guess. I didn't realize we were looking at such old data. So that's actually a good thing. I was pretty impressed seeing such big gains, considering we did that a couple months back. As you know, under safe and supportive culture, our big focus this year has been an accessible playground. So just a really quick update where we're at with that. After receiving the funding, we did some work with companies to design what that playground would look like. We have now selected and ordered the equipment for that. The rep from MEO, Brian, was able to provide some preliminary plans, which you'll see on the next slide, that show generally, the last slide, which show generally what equipment we're going to have in the playground, but they don't actually show the layout. The engineering firm is redesigning kind of where things are on the playground in order to minimize the amount of rubberized surfacing, because that is an incredible cost, but it's what makes it an accessible playground, a large part.
Are we pouring that, or are they, is it tiles, or are they pouring that?
We are not 100% positive yet, because the playground equipment was originally due to come in November. And what we're now hearing is it might be here a couple months earlier. The poured in place rubber is temperature dependent on when you can pour it. And so we kind of have been waiting to find out how we were going to proceed on that based on when the equipment arrives, and then also based on some extensions with the use of the funding through ESSER. And we've submitted for an extension, but they haven't done the approval.
They're calling it, if you don't mind me just chiming in, they're calling it late liquidation. So the funds need to be obligated, which they will be, that we've purchased the equipment, that purchase order's done. We will be going out to bid in the next, probably 3 weeks, for the installation, so we can secure services to have it done. But if we do, if the weather changes, or they're telling us an estimated date of September 19th, I think, or the following week, that the equipment will come. But if that were to go out and, you just don't know what's going to happen, we've asked, it's actually, we had to ask DESI. They were doing the first rounds of these late liquidations, June 15th, which we were in that. They're going to weed through all that they've received, and then they're going to give it to the federal government to approve. And I'm hoping, certainly hoping, and it's all just if. Just tell us if we need to go out 6 months, that we could, if we needed to. So that's the question that we're waiting to hear. And that will guide us as to, because we really would rather have poured rubberized surface, that we feel it's the best one. So I think I got that all. Does that make sense?
So if you recall, we purchased the equipment through the state contract, but we weren't able to do the installation that way because the amount was more than the contract allowed. So we had to kind of split this into 2 separate kind of processes, if you will. So we're in the next phases now is really reworking the physical layout to save on some of the poured in place surfacing that we might need, because that's very expensive. So they're taking into account the fall zones for each of those pieces of equipment and trying to reconfigure to save us some money there. And then we are working on going out to bid for the installation of the playground. The bid documents are being drawn up right now, and that will go out. It'll involve more site visits and all of that whole process all over again. And then once the site contract is awarded, the excavation will begin and equipment installation will begin, hopefully in the fall. Super excited that it could possibly be September, but that keeps shifting, because we thought September, then they said November, and it bounced back to September. So I guess we will wait and see when it actually arrives. And so that'll affect what kind of surfacing that we choose. As far as the specific pieces of equipment that you'll see up there, if you could go forward to that slide again, a lot of the equipment that we chose goes back to something, actually ties back to that social emotional learning goal. I shared a little bit last time about the regulated classroom training and how the different receptive systems in your body for proprioceptive, vestibular types of input can impact early childhood development and behavior, and how post-COVID, we're not seeing kids playing in the same way that they used to play. And so that training for the regulated classroom is based on increasing more of those inputs. Well, we thought about that when we were designing the playground as well, and we tried very intentionally to include a lot of equipment that would provide that same level of input, despite how nervous some of those pieces of equipment made me like the swing set. I just have a very bad experience about a swing set from when I was a principal in Springfield, and some missing teeth. So one of the things that we're gonna do is we're gonna put different color poured in place surfacing around the swing set to denote a very visual area of, please don't walk in here. But it will provide those same levels of input so that rocking, gliding, swinging, spinning, that kids don't always get. And if I think about our other playground, it's all based on climbing. There's no other types of input on that playground. So we were pretty intentional with the equipment that we chose, not only to make it accessible equipment, like you'll see, forgive my out of date terms, but the merry-go-round in the top left corner there, wheelchairs can go right on there and the kids can spin themselves. There's a wheel on the inside that they turn that spins it, or somebody can spin it from the outside. So the equipment is very accessible, but it's also designed with intention to get input in a lot of those systems, which hopefully will also help our kids with learning how to self-regulate and co-regulate. We need that. You might find me out on the playground.
By yourself.
Or one of these days. Any questions that we can answer for you? Tried to go quick.
Renee, you mentioned a care coordinator. Is that a district?
That is
Or another
funded
I've heard
district position. We're very lucky that it also happens to be our part-time preschool nurse. So she's in our building. a lot
I see.
of ways.
Okay, that's
I'm hoping
fun.
So it's grant funded through the comprehensive health
And
grant.
we'll continue that.
back next year.
Yes, we would like to continue that, yes.
I would too. It's been very helpful. She's done a lot of that outreach that typically would have fallen on us to do. So we used her for the students that had a much higher level of chronic absenteeism.
I think why there might be some confusion, we've heard it labeled case manager.
Okay.
It's the same person, it's not a new FTE at all.
No, that wasn't my concern. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having
Yeah.
us. Buddy.
Have a great summer.
Summer.
Thanks, everyone.
Good summer.
How's everybody feeling?
Good.
Good, Antonella? Come on.
I'm great.
Good job.
Overheated like I thought we would.
No,
It's not.
Oh, it's good. Hey.
It's that big family, yeah.
Their number one fan.
All right,
2 items left.
great. Superintendent self-evaluation, summative evaluation.
So I won't obviously read this all to you. It's there for all of you to review. It's similar to the mid-cycle. And actually, there's a typo there because I didn't take off mid-cycle in the beginning, but it's the summative, so it's updated. It's added evidence. It's basically where we were back in March up to where we are now in mid-June, and has incorporated a lot of what you've heard from all 5 schools. I've also created folders, which we had at the mid-cycle, but I've added to them, and so that's in there for the summative. We had agreed at the beginning of the year that we would keep this open in terms of an evaluation until we get the fall data. So, but given that we have all this information coming at us at the end of the year, it sort of made sense to put it together now. So make sure that you all had that. So it will be in the shared file and we can bring it back in the fall.
Yes, it does.
Okay. You're welcome.
Any questions or concerns?
I'm glad that we're moving to that approach, to waiting till we have student summative data to be able to input into summative evaluation. Thank you.
You should approve this. Or accept it.
You can accept it.
Accept it.
Or wait. The overall evaluation will come in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just wait, not
That'd
accept
be
it.
fine. I
Okay.
mean, you can,
Yeah, I'm good with it.
you can acknowledge it.
We love you, Gordon. You're the best.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Gordon.
Sure.
Need a motion for this Rotary Club of East Long Meadow that we added.
What are you, the chair or something?
Moving right along.
We're on 7:2. We have a discussion of the reorganization
pull that.
meeting, July 1st. Speaking of. We want to pick a time now. Are folks able to do that?
It's July.
It's a Monday.
Oh.
I will most likely have to join remotely for that one. I'm scheduled to be out of town. So, be flexible. I won't-
Did get word today that the food services ratified the contract.
Oh,
That just came in today. So we can either do that in July or we can do that in August.
let's do it in July.
Okay. So that would be,
Then it'll be done.
it would be an executive session first.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll have to do.
I mean,
right,
it would be relatively quick.
Yeah, we should just get it done.
Okay. I just figured I would mention that since
Okay.
we're looking at.
So we'll probably need 45 minutes to an hour. For both.
Right.
I would say.
Okay.
What's the proposal for
I
time?
can do 8 a.m.
8 a.m. it is.
There you go. Yeah.
Like,
Kate's not up yet though.
My kids won't be up.
no, she'll be up.
Does that work tentatively 8 o'clock or not tentatively?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, guys.
So we'll have executive first
July.
and then we'll have reorg.
So
So
8 to 8:30 executive or 8 to 8:15?
yeah,
executive?
8:15, yeah.
Okay.
You'll just send,
Regular meeting at 8:15.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense, Sam? You can schedule those. Thank you.
thank you. Okay.
What are we talking about next, Antonella?
I think we just.
Yeah, my one question was, do we usually let them hang banners on the?
We do it for that one event,
Okay.
right? It's temporary. They hang them and then they take them off after the event.
So I would take a motion to approve the Rotary Club's use of the facilities for both the summer concert series and the fireworks as described in the two memos. If there are any questions.
Make a motion to approve the Rotary Club of East Long Meadows use of the space, for their summer concert series, as well as their, oh boy. What is this one?
July 3rd fireworks.
Or July 3rd.
Motion made by Amy,
Second.
second by Antonella. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 5-0. Let them know.
Thank you.
Anything else? No, place. Any motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion made by Sarah.
Second.
Second by Kate. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you.